President-elect Trump is not only expected to significantly reshape the federal government when he takes office, he could also transform the city from which he will govern. A new Politico article outlines how Trump's second term will impact Washington's population, a population that's largely made up of Democratic people and full of federal employees. The author of that article joins us now. Michael Schaffer is a senior editor and columnist at Politico. Michael, it is so great to have you. And I think you really do capture something unique about this city, which is that at any time a new president comes in, there are obviously going to be some changes to the population. People leave, new people come in, but you're arguing that this time around the changes could be much more fundamental.
Right. Look, if people want to flatter themselves and say, well, you know, this administration's going to change everything, it's not really historically been the case. The city's basic trajectory has continued under right and left, even as the tasks given to the federal workers have changed quite a lot. This time is different. It's different because Trump arrives with a pretty specific agenda that includes getting rid of a lot of federal jobs, of people who took the job thinking, you know, I might never reach like top private sector salary, but I've got job security in this job. They want to change that. They also want to move a bunch of federal workers out of Washington. I think they want to move them someplace where they hope they quit so they can hire new ones. And that is a huge thing. The administration also on the sort of legal side, they have the power to kind of upend local democracy. So as voters here in Washington, we select a city council, we have schools, all that sort of stuff. But unlike people anywhere else in the country, here Congress can make laws to supersede them and say, this is how your schools are going to work, or this is how your garbage is going to get collected. For a lot of reasons, members of Congress don't want to do that historically, but this administration has shown a real hunger for kind of maximizing their impact.
And we know that President Trump is not a big fan of the D.C. government.
No, and weirdly, you know, he and the mayor of Washington got along pretty well at the beginning of his last administration. But in 2020, during the George Floyd protests, she okayed this big mural on the middle of 16th Street right by the White House that said Black Lives Matter. You know, there's a long tradition in this city of like renaming a stretch of road in front of a foreign embassy after some dissident from that country as a way of like spiting them. Well, in this case, she did it like to her own government.
Right. He could literally look out his own window in the White House and see that.
And he didn't like that. You know, a lot of people would have said, well, that's great. Black Lives Matter. It's an awesome thing.
Yeah.
But he took it personally, and apparently there's a lot of bad blood there.
You know, it's no secret that congressional Republicans are often at odds with the D.C. government.
Yes.
Obviously, D.C. is overwhelmingly Democratic. Sometimes they will try to meddle in D.C. affairs. But you're saying they could try to make a power grab now that they control the Senate, the White House, and we anticipate the House?
Yes, and look, D.C. has only had self-government since like 1973, so 50 years. Before that, there were no elections. The executive branch and the Congress appointed people to run the show. It was like a colony, and nobody here got any say-so over anything. There's people in the Congress who have sought to get rid of home rule, so that it goes back to something like that. More often, and this is like has a long history, members of Congress will sort of grandstand, try to put some things on the locals here that they couldn't get away with at home, but to make us, you know, to make a statement. Oh, I wanted to pass a law that all communists have to register before going to the bathroom in Washington. You know, like that kind of stuff. This time, you know, it's a little different because there is less respect for home rule. There is a real animus towards an overwhelmingly Democratic city. Washington's rules are kind of the same as any other blue city, but these are increasingly different from the rules and the kind of way of life in the red places that most of the Republican leadership represents. So that's a big thing. And then there's abortion, which...
Abortion?
Well, right. So abortion, after Roe v. Wade, is no longer a guaranteed right. Trump has said that he believes it should remain up to the states. Not a lot of the Republicans in Congress don't agree with that, but Trump has said he believes it should remain up to the states, but this is not a state. So Congress could, in its wisdom, simply pass a law saying it is illegal here in Washington, which is not what the residents here want. It's a pretty liberal city, but it is something that is certainly within their power.
If you could get 60 members of the Senate to go along with it. If you could get 60
members of the Senate. And you could also do it somewhere in between. Like Washington has one of the most liberal abortion regimes in the country in terms of later term abortions and so on. So it could be, well, we're going to, you know, put a limit on that.
Right.
So these are all things that are within the realm of possibility. Historically, they've been, you know, a lot of stuff has been within the realm of possibility of any administration, but this one comes in maybe a little bit more motivated to stick it to the people who live here.
Well, I think you make a really compelling argument that no matter what the president and Republicans in Congress decide to do, this city is going to be transformed in some way. Michael Schaffer of Politico, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it.